Thank you for watching South Georgia Hot.
So these are the tools that I end up using for this job. You have a 3/4 inch wrench and a adjustable wrench. That's to tighten the fittings onto the hose that's supplied with the kit. Obviously a magnet because you're going to drop a million things everywhere. The Allen wrench size that they used was a 5/32. Also there's a T20 star bit that I end up using to take that sensor out of the housing. You'll see when I get there. And just some various extensions. 1/2 inch wrench. This was to get some of the clips off and to break the hoses loose. Just a 10mm on both the 3/8 and the 1/8 inch ratchet. This was to cut zippy ties. 10mm, 12mm, 8mm, and then I used a 1/4 inch for the hose clamps. I have the Cp4 Prevention Kit right now that I'm about to tackle, and it seems like it's going to be a nightmare, so I kind of wanted to film the process for anybody who has a Ford and to keep you guys up to date on how hard it is, if it's something that maybe we can do ourselves. This is the kit that basically comes with this. Comes with a hose. Depending on what year model you have will depend on how long your hose is. And we went with I guess a diffuser kit. Tells you to go on here for the instructions. Instructions aren't really that great, to be completely honest with you. I'll probably end up flipping through some YouTube videos trying to figure this thing out. But I just kind of want to... So the first step basically is to remove the top of the intake, which doesn't look like it's going to be fun to do, honestly. I don't know how much of this stuff I'm going to have to disconnect in order to get to where we need to get to. So kind of want to just give you guys some step-by-step. You know, if you guys have the same truck or know somebody that has one, maybe we can figure this out and save someone a couple of wrong bolts taken out or whatever. Alright, so did a little bit of research. There's going to be 15 bolts in this top plastic piece here. So I've got the front ones loosened up. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here. And in order to get to the back ones, you have to loosen up these, the oil dipstick and the transmission dipstick, which is, there's a nut right here that you have to take off so that this will come up. And then there's a bolt back here that you have to take off because you have to get back to a bolt back here. So that's what I'm working on right now. All right, so you're looking at 4 more bolts back here. One of them's hidden from this plastic cap that the wires run through just to hold them wires still. So you have to pull that cap off, but there's 4 more back here. I would suggest getting an extension that allows the socket to wobble. So it's kind of shaped like that. Whereas a normal one is completely square. This one is kind of angled, so it allows the socket to kind of wobble back and forth, because this one back here on the left is super hard to get to. So you got 4 here, you got 4 over here, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. All right, you've got a sensor here on top of the intake. Take you a flathead screwdriver or something to push in on this little tab here, and then gently pull on it, and that'll come off like that. You've got a plastic plug back here that it's like an expand plug. When you push it in, it kind of catches. You can either cut the zippy tie and replace that zippy tie, or if you carefully pull on this, it'll pull those splines through, and then you should be able to reuse that one as well. All right, so I've got all the bolts loosened up now. As you can see, the intake is now loose, except for it looks like there's a sensor tube or a sensor bracket back here, keeping this back left corner from lifting up. So I'm trying to loosen that up. It's a complete pain in the ass. Also, before I forget, if you plan on doing this, I suggest running you a couple of things of tape along this edge here, because this plastic edge is super sharp. Can't really tell it, but I've ripped my hands up pretty good. So that'll prevent you from reaching back in here and just kind of peeling off your skin. All right, so we got the nut off of the bracket back here, but I think something is holding it further back. So instead of coming up and going this way, what I've decided to do is take off this charge pipe right here. I've already pulled the fuel filter there, because it calls for pulling that anyways, and I have to pull that filter housing. And a little trick to getting these hoses off, if they're stuck, is you just take like a pick and stick it up underneath the rubber hose and just kind of work your way around and break that seal from that hose to that pipe, and then that should just pull out of there like that. Well, this is my typical luck. Can't ever get anything done. You take a day to do something, ends up turning into a week, because I must have been an asshole in my previous life. Alright, so we have the upper intake removed now. I did break a little piece of plastic off of this, where this fuel filter goes. So be careful with that. Honestly, it started raining. I'm kind of pissed off every time I go to do something. Something like this always happens. So now we have to remove this lower intake. I've already removed these 2 bolts from this. Now it looks like I have 2 bolts over here and maybe 1 bolt here. There's a couple million sensors plugged in all around this that you have to go around and figure out. I've got this hose disconnected. I'm going to release this for the cooling system, and then I've got this clamp released. So now I'm going to take my 10mm and I'm going to go around here and I'm going to loosen these up. This hose right here, I just watched a video. It looks like it's easier to remove it from this side for some reason. But it doesn't look anything like mine, so there should be some tabs on this. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out, and I'll show you guys when I figure that out. Alright, so it looks like this is like an O2 sensor maybe. One side goes here. The other side goes to the intake itself. I found it easier just to go ahead and disconnect that. This plugs in underneath the intake. It's got one of these plastic deals here. You just kind of pull it out of the intake. So we'll set that off to the side. I still haven't figured out how to disconnect this hose. And what I may do is just leave that connected and maybe lay this intake over to the side here. Let me see. Because all we have to get to this piece right here is what we're trying to go for. And then, yeah, let me see what I get done. I'll show you guys what's next. Alright, so it seems they just put like a piece of heat shrink tubing on there. And if you just cut that off, you have access to these tabs. I read online that you should just be able to twist this thing around, and then those tabs release and you could pull it off. I tried to do it with this on. It didn't work. What I'll probably do, I don't know if I have any heat shrink tubing this big. I may just take and wrap it up with some electrical tape, and I think that just prevents those tabs from accidentally releasing and then maybe blowing off there. I have no idea. Alright, so that was a giant pain in the ass. Basically what I ended up doing was I took a flathead screwdriver and I put pressure. So if this is in here, let me put this back on. So if this is on here like this, I just kept pressure on it with a flathead like this, and then I just took my hook and I went all the way around and I just lifted up on these slowly, and then that allowed that collar to slide back, and then you just push that back and then that slides off. And the reason we have to take this off is because the instructions tells us we have to grind this burr down, because something's not going to fit unless we do. So you could probably wrap everything up with it in the truck, I'd rather not take the chance. I wanted to take it off, that way I could grind it and not have to worry about any metal shavings getting in anywhere. So now I just double checked the instructions. It is this square little knob that I have to grind off. So I'm going to do that now. I don't know if you guys can see this either. Look how much carbon we have built up in there already. Of course, the truck's got 150,000 miles on it. I may take some cleaner and spray in there just to get rid of the majority of the junk there. I was checking on a crankcase filter. I may go ahead and order that. I don't know if it'll get here in time, but it goes back there. See how dirty it is in this tube. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of oil in there now. So I'll go ahead and probably jump online tonight and get that ordered. I don't know if it'll be here before I leave, but we'll swap that out here upcoming. Okay, so the next step was to remove these two plastic clips to keep these in place. And then the next step was to remove, there was some C-clips on each of these lines. And then there's a 8mm bolt that goes in the middle there. You remove what they call as a T-bar. This line, they said, is to be left in place. They said to pull this line out. And then the next step is, I think I have to cut one of these lines and install the block that they supplied. All right. The next step is to remove these two screws on this, I don't know what they called it. Let me see what they call it. FCA, remove the metering unit, the FCA. And if my bits are correct, which I might have gotten them messed up, it was a T20 star bit, and there's two of them, and it's impossible to get it on there with the screwdriver alone. So what I had to do was take this little magnet, kind of guide it in there with my socket, and then I was able to back it out from there. Okay, they suggest cleaning this up real good. Wow, I don't know why it looks like that. I hope this light isn't flashing like that, like I see it in the screen. Anyways, they suggest cleaning this all up before you take it apart. I just took some brake cleaner and sprayed it up real good. And then it says to lube these O-rings. I just took that fuel filter and kind of dumped a little bit of diesel onto these O-rings. And then we're gonna slide this down in place like so. Just like that. And then this will go back into place here. Like that. And let me get that bolted back down. I'll be right back with you. Alright, so that's now in place, and I've bolted everything down. It comes with two new Allen bolts to bolt this sensor down in place. The next step is to, they want me to cut this high pressure line, and they want it, it's starting to get dark on me here. They want it 1 inch back from here. So I'm going to grab me some tape. I'm going to mark 1 inch back. I'm going to wrap it in some tape. Keep a straight line, and then we'll chop that back 1 inch. Alright, day 2, guys. It got too dark, and it was raining too hard yesterday to finish this up. So let's get this thing finished up today. And still have to cut the fuel line. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll work on the next few steps. Alright, so what I did, because I couldn't find any tape for some reason, I just took a little zippy tie and I measured off, and then tightened the zippy tie 1 inch back from this here. And now I'm just going to take some sandpaper and kind of deburr everything around it. And then inside, just rip you a little piece off. Then I'm going to take some carb cleaner or brake cleaner and clean all that out. And of course it's raining again. Of course. Now I think we have to take this apart. Looks like that has to slide in here like this. Yeah, so you put the nut on, slide this on, all the way down, and then this should thread onto this. So it seems this collar that they provide installs a different way than what you would imagine. So I would imagine it's shaped like this, so it doesn't really fit inside that. But if you flip it around, it looks like it fits inside there perfectly. But according to the instructions, it says to make sure that it fits basically the way it seems like it shouldn't fit. So make sure if you do that, you put it in there right. So you're going to slide the nut down on top of the piece that you just cut. You'll feed that piece on there like this, and then stick that on there like that, and then you'll tighten this nut down. Not sure how tight they want this thing. Well, it started pouring rain, and I didn't even bother to check the weather when I started this, or else I would have pulled this truck up here already. So what I had to do is pull the fuse for the fuel pump so that I could turn the key on to put it neutral so we could push it up here underneath the carport. And so now maybe I can get this thing done and the rain not affect me. Alright, just so you have a better clue on how these things work, because you won't be able to see this when you go to pop these off to get your lines out. You can see there's a hook that faces each way. You've got a hook that kind of jays and faces to my right, and then there's a J that hooks and faces to the left. So when this is squeezed together, they clamp in there. Now they claim you can stick a flathead screwdriver into the side and just kind of twist it and it'll come apart. I wasn't that lucky. Let me see if I can get you guys some better light here. I had to stick a pick in there and push this back and pry up on it, and then push this one back and pry up on it in order for that to pull apart. And now I'm on the step now where it's explaining to cut. It says to cut the Christmas tree closest to the bracket, and it says the top one's modified but the bottom one isn't. And I think they have that backwards, because the top one is the one that isn't modified, because these are the Christmas trees, these pieces that stick down right here. and the bottom one's modified, but the top one isn't. I think they worded that wrong. And basically, they just want you to take and cut this Christmas tree closest to the bracket so that this whole piece can turn and face a different direction that's needed. Alright, so the next problem I just had was I tightened all of this. I tightened that bracket, or the nut, with it off of the truck, which ended up putting this sensor fitting down. So I would say snug it up, go ahead and bolt it in and route it, and then turn this up to where you can get the sensor click back into it, and then finish and tighten it from there. Alright, we've got all the fuel lines hooked back up, tightened down. I went ahead and installed the canister again temporarily. The tab I broke is what keeps this thing from twisting, but I think with all these lines in there, I think it'll be okay. I mean, I don't have a choice now. A video I watched of a guy taking the upper intake off and doing this, put it all back together, went to prime the fuel pump, and fuel sprayed everywhere, and then he had to take everything back off again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave it like this. I'm going to go ahead and prime the fuel pump a few times. Double check, make sure we don't have any fuel fittings leaking before we stick the intake back on. Maybe save us a few steps, hopefully. I didn't think the truck would start with all these sensors and everything unplugged, but I guess it did. I also didn't hear it prime though, so I don't know if it's running off the fuel that's in the lines right now or what. Let me try it one more time. Alright, it's definitely priming. It just doesn't seem as loud as what it normally sounds like. I don't see no, that's definitely fuel down there. We have a fuel leak from somewhere. That's a greenish water down in there. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm just taking wads of paper towel, sticking it down in here and sopping up all this diesel fuel. Most of it's water from the rain. And then I've got Lita sitting in the truck. After I get this done, I'll have her cycle the key a few times so we can see where this thing's leaking from. Alright, so we are leaking from around this sensor that we had to rebolt on here. I'm going to take my Allen wrench and stick it back on there, see if we can get that thing tightened up anymore. May have to pull it out. The rubber O-rings might have been damaged when we put it in there. So let me try to tighten that thing up again. We'll try it again here. There's three rubber O-rings that come with this kit. There's a large one that I couldn't figure out where it goes because the instructions don't tell you. So I'm thinking the large one goes on top of this block and it slides down here in this groove. And I think maybe that's where it was leaking from. So we're going to put that on now and we're going to give that a shot, see if that was the case there. So I would suggest installing this piece onto this piece first before you install this piece. I think that's going to be a good trick there too. Alright, looks like we finally got that that leak gone. I had to completely undo that hose that runs there to get it to screw back into this block, because that block is aluminum. You don't want to cross those threads. So I'm going to soak up all that diesel, start putting this thing back together. So the way Ford made these intakes is you can't take these bolts out, which is a great idea. So you can't lose them. See, they won't back out all the way. You can't pull them out all the way. The problem is when you go to put this thing in or take it out, they hang down and they catch on everything when you're trying to pull them in and out. And there's no way to lift up on all of these. I thought about maybe pulling them up and then running a zippy tie around them or something. God, that would be such a pain in the butt. Maybe that might be the thing to do. So we're catching on some bolts back here in the back. What I'm trying to do is slowly go around and lift one up one at a time and try to get this thing to slide back in there. That way we can get this thing bolted up again.